In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Hi, Lester, Wushu Engineer. My videos have been somewhat sporadic over the last couple of months. For that, I do apologize. There are a number of projects that I'm currently tackling, both for the channel and for our other endeavors that are eating away at my time. However, I've been quite excited and eager to upload this particular video for some time, although the work has only really very recently been completed, in other words, yesterday. It's taken quite a bit of time and effort and resources to build this project, and I'd like to add now that it comes with some really exciting announcements. In particular, to do with some awesome potential giveaways if we get enough love on this video. So check in the description below and at the end of this video for competition details. I've always been interested in the idea of building a power weapon, and many other channels such as Jairus of All and Hacksmith have tackled this idea with varying levels of success. However, one thing that these attempts lacked was, in most cases, the weapons were not designed and built by someone who is familiar with weapon use. In other words, a hand-to-hand fighting specialist such as myself. The power weapons examples that I have seen have thus typically been fairly impractical, to the level of actually pretty much being unusable as real weapons. Sure, you could use them to destroy things with, but you would not be able to apply them effectively within a contested fight against a skilled opponent. I have thus planned several projects in which I will be designing and building various power weapons that would actually function within the context of a fight. And I'm proud to bring you this. The functional Warhammer 40,000 folding power spear. You may be wondering why I am showing you pictures and not holding the weapon in my two hands. Well, as you can probably gather from the title of this video, this story didn't have a very happy ending. Stay tuned for the epic fail. For once I happened to have the cameras rolling while something interesting and unplanned happened. Although do not despair, all is not lost. I have the technology. I can rebuild it. As you can see from the photos, I used my folding titanium spear, as seen in some of my previous videos, as the base for this weapon build. I encourage you to check out those earlier videos of mine if you're interested in the titanium folding spear project. This iteration of the folding spear as a power weapon will be the final form of this folding spear. I don't plan to do anything else using the folding spear as a base, merely to rebuild the power spear once I have the resources to do so. Some of my viewers will be aware of the Warhammer 40,000 miniature wargaming system, along with its extended lore and literature. I've always enjoyed this franchise. In particular, I've always been interested in its associated lore, which covers various technologies, training methods, genetics, alien xenos species, as well as the Empire of Man and its stalwart, genetically engineered super soldier protectors, the Adeptus Astartes. I've actually played the epic version of Warhammer 40,000 as a tabletop wargame a little bit, but not a huge amount. One of the features that appears within the lore and the wargame itself is the concept of the power weapon. In Warhammer 40,000, the idea of a power weapon is a little bit more subdued than weapons like the lightsaber in the Star Wars franchise, for instance. In other words, they're just a little bit easier to build in real life. The Warhammer 40K lore suggests that power weapons are surrounded by some form of energy field that acts to disrupt matter when the weapon makes contact with a target. The artwork typically depicts these weapons as being surrounded by electrical coronas or discharges. This would imply that the type of disruption accomplished is likely electrical in nature. This sounds cool and all, but a little bit difficult to accomplish in real life. In fact, it suffers from similar problems to a Star Wars lightsaber in that both weapons would require a staggering amount of power to function, making the battery or capacitive storage, energy storage associated with them with these devices absurdly high, pretty much beyond our current technical ability as a race. So how did I make this spear a power weapon then? Well, the Wushu scientist made a suggestion that the weapon should merely discharge electrically on contact with a target. However, high voltage electrical discharge stun weapons are Category R weapons in Queensland, Australia, and so cannot be owned by anyone who does not have the required paperwork. So I couldn't design and build a high voltage stun weapon. It was then that I considered that one of the threats facing combatants in the 41st millennium is the cybernetically enhanced opponent. Opponents that are completely or partially electrical in nature. Many of the races in the 41st millennium augment the bodies of their warriors with machinery and electronics, including the Empire of Man. And that kind of augmentation requires a great deal of microscopic wiring running through the organic sections of the subject's body and interfacing with their nervous systems. Essentially, these opponents would have thousands of tiny wires running through their bodies, interfacing with their nerves and brain. Much like the player characters in the cyberpunk role-playing game, for instance. So my power weapon is designed as an anti-cyber power weapon. It's designed to breach the toughened skin of an augmented opponent with its reinforced titanium probes and directly expose the cybernetic wiring beneath to a large electrical pulse at relatively low voltage. The voltage is so low, at just over 10 volts, that I can safely touch it without any risk of electrical discharge. Due to the necessarily tiny cross-section of the cybernetic wiring, their current carrying capacity would be quite low, which means that the current pulse will almost certainly melt the wires and burn sections of the local network out, severing communications between cybernetics and the nervous system, thus rendering the cybernetics somewhat compromised. There's even a possibility that outgoing and incoming conductors may be simultaneously breached by the probes of my power spear, sending the current pulse back to the source and burning out the cybernetic implants or neural interfaces themselves. As you can imagine, this would be a particularly useful weapon when facing big, tough, cybernetically enhanced enemies. Perhaps even the cyber demons from the Doom franchise. You could use this to slowly disable cybernetic implants until the opponent is completely compromised. So now, battle brothers and sisters, let us away to the bright forges of the Wushu workshop, where we can discuss the project in a little bit more technical detail. So I just want to briefly discuss some of the technical aspects of the power spear construction. I will start with the basic construction of the spear. You've seen some of my previous videos in which I show how the spear is articulated in the center and can fold. I'm not going to demonstrate that now. So basically this is constructed of fiberglass batten with longettes and fixings made out of titanium, which has been riveted and epoxied onto the fiberglass batten. And yeah, so check out my other folding spear videos to get a better idea of how this is constructed. In terms of the power supplies, we'll have a look at the back of the unit. I've got a built-up power supply into a set of stainless steel tubing that I had a couple of offcuts of stainless steel tubing and bolted into that. Got a power switch on the back, which is protected by a raised section so it doesn't accidentally get switched on. I've also got a voltage readout on the side of the power supply just for fun. So you can see it's at 12.4 volts at the moment. In the spear itself, I've installed aluminium bus bars through large sections of the spear shaft, which are all hidden by this shrink wrap, which it makes a reasonably good handle reasonably, I should say, reasonably good grip material, and is also obviously keeping the electrical parts insulated for the most part. In the center, because of the articulated section, the joint here, I had to come up with something a little bit more flexible. And I didn't want to use copper wire because it doesn't tend to like being bent repeatedly and suffers metal fatigue. All metals do, but copper can break down quite easily. So as a bit of a compromise, I used stainless steel cord. Now that's a massive compromise because stainless steel cord, of course, for those of you who know, has a much higher resistance than copper or aluminium. So this is a high resistance connection in the system. And with some of the tests that I've done, this section has overheated. So there's more current flowing through this than this can safely handle. And this needs to be addressed at some stage in the future. Otherwise, this is potentially going to be a point at which the system is going to fail. But I need to think about it a little bit more and come up with an alternative that's going to give me the flexibility and the low resistance that I need and still be fairly cost effective and rugged, because obviously this is potentially exposed. A lot of the Warhammer 40,000 weapons that are depicted in the artwork and on the models have big cables and ducts and all kinds of things exposed. But of course, in combat, those are all going to be liabilities because they can get caught on items of clothing or attacked as weak points in the weapon. So, so I tried to keep it as robust and concealed as I could. But we're still with sections like this section that are going to be exposed necessarily because of the mechanism, the folding mechanism. And so we'll come to the housing, the spear tip housing. I've constructed this essentially just a little box of 4mm thick it's MG10 or G10. Sorry, I think it's G10 fiberglass. So very high strength, very dense fiberglass material. So I've constructed it essentially like a little box, and I can open the box to access the electronics inside. And the actual spear tip itself. So the two prongs that you see here are really just two large electrodes that penetrate the target. And a circuit gets bridged across there between any conductive parts. If I switch it on and grab the end of it, you can see that there's no voltage. The voltage isn't high enough to actually overcome my skin's natural resistance. So it's fairly safe. Of course, once it penetrates and hits a conductive object, like let's say cybernetic wires that are embedded in someone's body, then that point of contact between those electrodes becomes a high resistance path, and the high current can potentially cause malfunctions or break the wiring down electrically. Excuse me. You also notice that if I hold my hand here, you'll see that there's a laser targeting system that I've installed in the spear. Very experimental and just for fun, really. It's because I could really just did it because I could do it. I'll test that out and see whether that makes any kind of real difference in performance. And lastly, I constructed these, which are purity seals. For those who are familiar with the Warhammer 40,000 lore, the purity seals contain various blessings and litanies that are of a religious nature for the warriors of the 41st millennium. And the seal itself sometimes confers some kind of, potentially can confer some kind of supernatural or psychological protection against the forces of chaos and corrupting influences. So I've built these purity seals I've made them out of an aramid composite, so they're very high strength, very reinforced seals, so battle worthy, if you like, and then just printed this on some fabric as well. I've got two of them, one on either side, because one may not be enough in the 41st millennium. And of course they're removable. I made them removable so I could take the spear apart if necessary. They're just held on with some Velcro for now. And of course that brings us to these smaller purity seals that I made out of the same kind of material. So these are also reinforced aramid composite seals with an appropriate litany to protect any of you aspiring warriors of the 41st millennium out there. And so if you pay attention to the competition that we would like to run, these will be awarded as prizes, one to the outright winner for naming the spear, and the other to the runner-up. And of course the winner will receive one of these purity seals and also a free Wushu Engineer t-shirt, while the runner-up will just receive a purity seal, and that's that, I'm afraid. There's are really cool things, and a really, I wouldn't say one of a kind because I made 4 of them, but certainly not something that you'll be able to get anywhere else very easily, because as I said, they're not just made out of wax. These are made out of a high-strength aramid composite. While we're in the workshop, I just wanted to demonstrate what happens when very fine conductors like this steel wool, fine steel wool, come into contact with these electrodes. So quite dramatic, and as I mentioned in my introduction, that's the idea of the spear, that once penetrating to get to the cybernetic wiring underneath the surface of the skin, it will essentially disrupt that wiring and disable implanted cybernetics and the network that communicates between the cybernetics and the nerves of the subject. Now on to our competition, which is quite obviously a shameless act of self-promotion, because we want our channel to grow so that we can tackle more cool projects like this, and we do need your help for that. This project was quite a big personal investment, and it was something that I've been wanting to do for some time, but there are other projects that are even more technically challenging and bizarre that I'd like to tackle. And of course if this video doesn't do great, there is a less incentive for me to tackle the others. So here's what we're going to do. Like and comment on this video with a cool Warhammer 40K inspired name for the folding spear. If we get 100 likes on this video, I will post free CAD plans on our Wushu workshop website for the titanium folding spear. I will also rebuild the power spear after its unfortunate failure, which you'll see later, and I will upload a more in-depth technical how-to video on the folding power spear. If I get 200 likes on this video, we will go through all of the submitted names that you've submitted for the power spear, and we will choose a winner and a runner-up in the naming competition. The runner-up will receive one of these limited edition, because I made them myself, aramid-reinforced composite purity seals. If we get, and the winner will receive one of these purity seals and a Wushu Engineer t-shirt from our Wushu Engineer workshop. If we get 500 likes or more on this video, I will embark on one of my coolest build projects yet. I will design, develop, build, and combat test a powered version of the iconic Astartes Combat Knife. So if you want these events to transpire, Please share this video far and wide and get the likes rolling in on it. The following excerpt showcasing the Astartes Combat Knife is from the fan film entitled Astartes. It's an awesome film project and well worth your support. I'll leave a link in my description below. So on to the fateful demonstration and testing phase. I first demoed the anti-cyber power weapon feature, and that went quite well. I then went on to play a bit with the weapon against a reactive wooden dummy, and this is where things went horribly pear-shaped.
It's still freaking hot. Doesn't help that I've got holes in my gloves. Anyway.
It's pretty fried.
Ah, jeepers. Yep, that's completely mashed.
Wow.
Just be careful, it may still react. Yep, that's one dead battery. Jeepers creepers. Yep, I think we're going to need a replacement and maybe, just maybe, an inline fuse, I would think. Damn it. Oh well. I'll have to rebuild that one.
It turned out that some of the issues I brought up in the technical section came back to haunt me. The weapon must have developed a barely detectable intermittent short circuit through the insulation barrier between the bus bars and the underlying titanium of the weapon beneath. This short must have become continuous during the testing and caused a meltdown of the LiPo battery.
So, after doing a little bit of troubleshooting, while we've got this all open, you can take a look at the way that I've set up the bus bars to run alongside the glass fiber batten to minimize the bulk and getting in the way, and then they kind of wrap around in a L section, aluminium L section on the sides that is separated sufficiently so that it doesn't short out between the two bus bars. But as it turns out, I think what happened was that earlier on in my testing, this particular, as I mentioned earlier in my video, this particular steel cord overheated, and I think what happened was that it spot heated the tape underneath. You might just be able to see there are a couple of little suspect areas there, and a discoloration due to a burn. I think what happened was that when this heated up, it melted through the tape in this location here, and thereby set up a short on the system that I didn't detect because it was not continuous. And I think during the test that ultimately the test that I did, in which the system failed, I think it just shorted out through there and burnt out the battery supply. So, a couple of things that I can do to sort that out in future reconstructions. I could replace this tape with something a little bit more robust, and I can put an inline fuse in line with the battery supply to ensure that the current doesn't go above a certain value, although the current that we want from it is actually quite high, so a fuse may not actually be an option in this case. I'm going to just have to have a bit of a think about it. Bit sad, but these things happen, I suppose.
Fortunately, this problem is very minor and easily solved with better insulation and a better replacement for the flexible coupling at the joint. However, I lost my power supply, which will take some time, cost and effort to rebuild. Sad, but I do plan on rebuilding and improving on the original. So I felt that, in conclusion, based on my limited experience using the power spear during the testing, I felt that the laser targeting system could ultimately have an effect on the precision of the weapon, although I depend a lot on a combination of feel and visual targeting for accuracy, and it will take a little bit more time to more fully and efficiently integrate the additional information from the laser targeting system to my subconscious combat responses. The main problem associated with the laser targeting system is that its effectiveness was compromised in bright conditions. Obviously, a brighter laser and or some form of integrated heads-up targeting system in combination with the existing laser may be the answer. Another issue with the laser is that it is mounted a few centimeters above the spear tip, meaning that the laser crosshair is situated above the actual spear point. This discrepancy must be learnt and accounted for by the user when using the targeting system. The anti-cyber component of the weapon functioned effectively until the spear's catastrophic failure, that is. As mentioned in the technical section, the flexible coupling at the hinged joint introduced a higher resistance in the power distribution, and this needs to be improved in the Mark II version of the power spear. This should either be replaced or improved to ensure that the weapon can deliver its maximum current without frying itself. In addition, the power supply must now be rebuilt. Additionally, the main switch was severely underrated in terms of current carrying capacity. I think it was only rated to a few amps, while the power supply itself could provide short current bursts of around 50 to 60 amps. This nearly baked the switch a couple of times, so perhaps switching a relay or some power MOSFETs may be the appropriate solution here. I learned a lot of valuable lessons from this project, and I've had a lot of fun building it. And one of the most technically challenging parts of the project was working out how to make a robust weapon composed of composite sandwiches of conducting elements that must all be electrically isolated. Finally, I'd like to give you another quick reminder about our special offers and the competition we are running to promote our channel. 100 likes on the video and I'll post free CAD plans on our Wushu Workshop website for the folding spear. I'll rebuild the power spear and I'll upload a more in-depth technical how-to. 200 likes and we go through your submitted names and choose a winner and a runner-up in the naming competition. And remember, the runner-up will receive a high-strength aramid-reinforced composite purity seal, and the winner will receive a purity seal and a free Wushu Engineer t-shirt from our Wushu Engineer website. If we get 500 likes or more on the video, I will design, develop, build, and combat test a powered version of the Astartes Combat Knife. I'm really hoping that we get those 500 likes because I am definitely looking forward to building the Astartes Combat Knife. So please get the likes rolling in. So anyway, I will see you next time, battle brothers and sisters. Cheers.